Good morning, good afternoon, and or good evening, wherever you're hearing this audio. Welcome to episode 2 of the Busted Coverage podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Sampieri, as always joined by my colleagues Cam Griffin, who is our moderator for this episode, as well as Matthew Baywood. Before we get started, we just want to say thank you all for listening, and we hope you enjoy this episode. So, with that, I'm going to pass it on over to Mr. Cam Griffin. Take it away.
Thank you, Nick. So, this is clearly our second episode. Last week we had some great topics and some great momentum leading into this week. So, with that in mind, we're going to basically kick it right off. We're going to pick up where we left off last week, talking about the Luka trade. Now that we have more of a sample size, we can see: do we agree with the trade? Do we still have a sample size big enough to make a decision? Does it look like he's even wants to be on the Lakers? Because the first few games he kind of didn't look like he wanted to be there. Then we'll talk about load management, a big issue in the NBA and actually some other sports too right now, as it is. We'll move on over to NIL. Is it good, bad, or do we feel indifferent about it? We'll look at the transfer portal, and then we'll close out with Nick's rants. It's been a heck of a sports week. I'm sure he's got some things to say. Baywood's bets. Conference season's heating up. I'm sure there's some games and some bets where he's gonna tell us what we should be putting our money, and then I will close out with my Cam Jam games of the week. So pay attention and maybe you'll learn something. But we're gonna start off with the Luka trade. Now we know Luka is Matt's favorite player in the NBA, so we're gonna start with Matt. Matt, the Luka trade happened a few weeks ago at this point, and we have more of a sample size. I know he sat out the first few games, but do you think that the Lakers still won this trade weeks later?
I'm gonna have an interesting take on this. I'm gonna say yes, but they don't want to face the Mavericks in the playoffs. I think that's the only team that can actually really get in their way from making a long playoff run. I don't necessarily mean winning the West because they got some powerhouses in there. Yes, they beat Denver one game, but can they do that through a whole series? We don't know. And OKC is OKC. So right now, I'm gonna say yes, just because of the way that it's uh, an unselfish reason would be because it's freeing LeBron up from having to worry about making every single decision in the game and maybe deferring to Austin Reeves a couple of times and just to catch his breath. It's more like LeBron can cut to the basket and play his true position because he's not really a point guard. He just sort of took that mantle. Luka is better with the ball than off the ball. LeBron seems to be able to do it all. He could play on the ball, off the ball. Teams don't really know how to defend it at the moment because he never really plays off the ball. So that was what I think the first few games were about, where you said Luka didn't seem like he really wanted to be there. I think it was more like LeBron was still kind of taking the mantle and kind of showing him the team. And it was kind of like a one up, like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do this too. I can do this better. Like the passing, there'd be one LeBron would throw it up the court, then Luka would throw it up the court, then it would be, oh, I'm going to do a step back. Oh, no, I'm going to do a step back. Um, and then I think it was the Denver game or the game before, but I think it was the Denver game that Luka played on the ball more, and they beat Denver for like the first time in 14 games or something like that. I think they only had one win in 14 games or something like that. They got swept in the playoffs once. They didn't win in the regular season, and then the last time they faced each other in the playoffs, they got gentlemen swept, so they won one game. Um, LeBron hasn't been able to find an answer. It could be a coaching issue. It could not be. But the reason why I say that the Mavericks are the biggest threat to the Lakers is the Lakers have no center that, or just they don't have a big enough team to keep up with Derek Lively, Dan Gafford, and Anthony Davis when he's healthy, because they didn't play Anthony Davis at all, and they barely won. So, did the Lakers win the trade? I think yes in the long run. And definitely yes at this moment, because Anthony Davis has been inactive except for that one, like 3.5 quarters he played for the Mavericks uh, in his debut game. Um, but other than that, I think the Lakers won this trade. They just need to sort of build around him this offseason. I don't expect anything to happen where they make the finals or they could make a deep run into the playoffs, but going to the finals, I just don't think until they get some size that it really does anything for them. Luka's stat line hasn't been great through any of his games. I mean, he did get a triple-double against the Mavericks, becoming the third person in NBA history to get a triple-double on every team. Just pointing it out there. I'm gonna guess that the other two are LeBron and Westbrook. I don't have any stats to back that up. I'm just gonna guess. But overall, the trade's been good. It's been nice to see, LeBron be able to close the fourth quarter. It's been nice to see that the Lakers management stopped listening to LeBron's every wish and actually, went behind LeBron and AD's back and made a trade and sort of empowered the coaches again and the management rather than the players demanding trades. So I think that all in all, I think the Lakers won. I also think the Mavericks won, but the Lakers won initially, even though we said the Mavericks before, because Anthony Davis is inactive, as we always know. So, Nick, I'm going to pass it to you.
Nick, what do you think about what Matt just said? Do you agree? Do you still think the Mavericks won the trade or lost the trade, or do you think the Lakers have more upside with Luka right now, or how far do you feel we need to look into the future to see if this was a good trade or not?
So I agree with Matt that in the long run, the Lakers will win this trade. Luka Doncic, who just turned 26 years of age on Friday night, has a ton more upside than Anthony Davis does. Even though they play two kind of different positions and two different styles, but going off of Luka, I mean, he's not playing very efficient basketball in terms of shooting percentages. Still giving you 21, 8.5 rebounds, 6 assists. And he's coming off that calf. He didn't play at all in January. Before the injury, he was averaging about anywhere from 35 to 37 minutes. He's only playing 31 minutes a game so far since he's become a Laker on average. So I think he's still, catching his wind and getting back in game shape. With that in mind, since the trade, the Lakers are 9-2. With Luka, he's played 7 games. They're 5-2 when he plays, including wins over the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, the Pacers, 2 against the Clippers, and Dallas. So they're winning important basketball games, and I think Luka's just getting, his feet under him. And I think that's a great sign because he's going to have all of March to continue to get in shape, get more chemistry with guys like Reeves, who's really benefiting from having that second creator on the floor with LeBron. His numbers are way up. So is Rui Hachimura's. I think the Lakers team, from an offensive efficiency standpoint, is great right now. And they're actually playing pretty efficient basketball on the defensive end as well. I think the most points they've allowed since the trade was 131 to the Jazz. But, they held the Clippers in the beginning of the month to 97. Nuggets to a 23-point win at Denver. That was huge. T-Wolves 102. And actually the Clippers this past Friday 102. So they can play defense despite, not having a lot of depth in their front court with the bigs. And, so it's appearing, especially with, Davis being injured, the perception in the short term is that the Lakers are winning this trade because they're winning more games, they're winning more meaningful basketball games, and looking at, AD's injury, he's being reevaluated, I think, at the end of this coming week. But even with Gafford and Lively are out until at least April. And right now they're the 10. So they're the last play-in team. They might not even make the playoffs. And the Lakers are now third in the West because Memphis lost to the Knicks last night. So they might not even see the Mavericks in the playoffs at all. So, in my opinion, I think we still need a little bit more, especially with 80, only playing one game, and he was playing great until he got hurt. But as it stands right now, the Lakers have won this trade in both the short term and, in my opinion, the long term. They will win out this trade. So those are my 2 cents.
So
Okay.
just to add to what Nick was going on, he made a couple of good points. The defense that the Lakers playing is not just everyone but Luka. Luka is playing as good a defense as he possibly can. His best defense is when he jumps through the passing lane and just
Mm-hmm.
he can read, his IQ's up there, so he knows where the ball is going to be going, and he can make educated guesses on it, and he just jumps through it, steals it. I think he's like third or fourth in the league in steals. I don't know if it's per game or just like the maybe not steals overall. I think it's just steals per game just because of the way that he's able to jump through. Um, but I watched pretty much every Laker game. So Luka gets double teamed a lot. They don't want him doing anything. So his assists and I guess if you want to say hockey assists are up. He probably has more of those per game than he does points at this moment. I think the other night he had 31 though. Uh, but they're not letting him get to where he wants to get to, where he gets in a rhythm and he can hit those step back 3-point shots and he could get to the paint and either dish it out for a 3-point shot to people that he continues to have chemistry with, like Dorian Finney-Smith, or he's shown instant chemistry with LeBron, or he could just take it to the hoop, and he's shown that he could push the pace and not just play slow. He's mixed it up a lot, so I think Luka's adding some things to his bag. It might be courtesy of LeBron. It might just be a stab at Nico Harrison, and the fact that he hit 2 back-to-back threes in that game and then stared down Nico Harrison just shows that he's got full passion and he's pissed off about the trade. So I don't know if Cam has anything to say, but
Yeah, no, I think you guys brought up some good points on there. I think one of the things I remember an announcer saying years ago is never piss off a superstar and tell them they can't do something. And I think that was what we all said about Luka is you can't play D. And now he's getting more steals and trying to play D a lot more now than he did when he was in Dallas. However, I still don't see a big enough sample size to compare the trades. And the only reason I'm going to say that is because, like we pointed out earlier, AD has not played. So I'm comparing one to, well, actually, look at it this way before I even go down that road. This is the best the Lakers are going to be going forward. There's nobody else coming on the team. Their roster is their roster. The Mavericks, AD's played one game, Gafford's out, and Lively's out. So they have no bigs going forward until at least AD comes back. We don't know what their lineup is going to look like. We have a one game sample size, or maybe one game. And in all fairness, it looked great. But we have more questions than we do answers because it seems that AD got traded and now everybody's hurt. I was unaware Derek Lively was even out until I pulled up the stat sheet. So, Nick, thank you because I was not aware of that. And I will say I did look at the standings and they are in 10th place. But irony on that is they're only a game or a half game behind 6th place. So there's a very good chance that they could end up facing the Lakers in the first round because 10th place has a 32-29 record and 6th place has a 32-27 record. So they're only, by this knowledge, a game out of 6th. So one win means a lot here.
but if Anthony Davis doesn't play, doesn't that mean that the Lakers win the short-term trade?
The short-term trade on this, well, I think the question would be, what do we define as a win? If we're
Lakers are going
saying,
to make the playoffs. The Mavericks are still slowly falling. The Mavericks at one point were either first or second. Maybe not first because OKC's been up there all year, but they were like
yeah,
second or third in the West. And they've just been, since Luka's been out, they've been slowly trickling. And it's been, on that downward trajectory through the Anthony Davis trade. And don't count the Suns out. Yeah, the Suns are sitting at 11 right now, but at some point, KD and Devin Booker are going to catch fire, and that offense is a real problem. So
Yeah, no, and
anything can happen.
that's the point. So the question is, what do you consider a win? So if the Mavericks have been falling once Luka was out, and they find a way to make the playoffs after this trade, it's not really a loss. The Lakers were already in the playoffs before the trade, and
When
they've stayed there.
when the Mavericks get healthy, they are going to be a scary team. But
So then
the
that would be
big thing is if they get healthy, because Anthony Davis is I want to say a vintage injured player. Ever since he was on New Orleans, he was always injured. He had a few seasons where he wasn't as banged up, but the guy will stub his toe and be out for 3 weeks. It's just he's too inconsistent of a player to bank anything on. When he is healthy and motivated, there isn't many people that can stop him in the NBA. So the potential is there for them to regain the short-term win, because especially if Anthony Davis is healthy going into the playoffs in maybe the first round against the Lakers, that's going to be a huge issue. The Lakers have
well, and
nothing to defend all that.
and that was gonna be my second point on this when I said, well, what are we defining as winning the trade? If the Mavs go out this year and beat the Lakers in the first round, are we looking at but lose in the second round? Do we really look at that as a winnable trade? Not really, because your goal is to win a championship with this lineup. That's why you made the trade. If they don't make the playoffs and you say, well, AD was hurt, does that win the do the Lakers win the trade? Well, we don't know. If you go and get swept in the first round of the playoffs, is that really a win? Not really. So I think the trade is more long term for the Lakers. I will agree on that.
This is also
Um,
assuming that the Lakers are able to re-sign Luka after this year, because he is a free agent.
Oh,
and
they
I'm a
go
I'm
pay
a
him.
well I'm gonna put this out there. This was something that was said on NBA TV a few weeks ago. It was really funny. It wasn't even by a announcer. It was Luka and Jokic were teasing each other, and they were each asked if they would ever play with the other. And Jokic said, "Well, if Luka wants to come to Denver, we'd be more than welcome to have him." And then that's what Jokic said. And then Luka turned around and said, "Well, if Jokic wants to come to Dallas, we would take him here." Well, he's no longer in Dallas, and he's a free agent.
Yep.
I would not be surprised if he does not end up a Laker at the end of the season.
You got to get Westbrook out of there first.
But here's the thing: if you're telling me that you're going to sign Luka, you can clear whoever the hell you want off that team. And Nick, after we were talking about Jamal Murray today not showing up in the first half, I would not be surprised if they tried to pull that trigger and get rid of Murray and try and go get Luka. That's just
Mistake.
that's just me. There's no inside news. That's just a theory based off what we heard. And I'll throw this little tidbit out there. The last time we heard players talk like that, Bosch went to Miami with LeBron. Just saying. So we have a history of stuff like this happening. But I still think it's a little too soon to judge the Mavericks on this trade because AD is hurt. But you knew what you were getting, and you didn't get him for the regular season. You got him for the playoffs. So their goal is to just make the playoffs and then go from there. They will have, in my opinion, the best front court in the Western Conference. Full front court, 4 and 5. Jokic is clearly the best center, but if you have AD and Gafford, I don't really think anyone's stopping that front court. So the jury's still out. I think we'll revisit this again when Anthony Davis comes back to play eventually. So we'll have to wait another week or two. Nick, you said the reevaluation is at the end of this week, you believe?
So according to ESPN injury report,
Mm-hmm.
states here estimated return date is March 7th, but it said February 20th. The Mavericks announced that there will be a reevaluation on his left adductor strain from 2 weeks ago. So 8 days would be the 28th. So another 6 after that would be March 6th, March 7th. So I'm assuming the reevaluation would take place then.
So it should be the end
So
of
he
this
could be
week.
out even longer.
Yeah.
depending on that
Yeah,
reevaluation.
when you reevaluate, let's look at this perspective real here. When you reevaluate a player,
Mhm.
you're looking at them and saying, well, where's the pain tolerance? Is it manageable, or do we have to keep you out? Maybe x-rays, more physical therapy a little bit. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be cleared to play that night.
Yep.
So I think you had a good point there too. Is just because we're reevaluating him doesn't mean that he's going to be suiting up that night or the next. What it might do is it might give us an end to the timeline and say, look, he will be back. He's got to ramp back up and get back into running shape, and then he'll be back in 2 games. But I don't think we should expect, okay, he's cleared, he's going to show up that night, especially if it's the 8th. I mean, if it's the 7th, they play the Grizzlies Friday. I don't think that's gonna be his first game back.
I feel like they
So
ruined his debut because they should have put him on a minutes restriction like they put Luka on a minutes restriction for the first few games. You're coming
you
back from
know,
an injury like that, and you don't just throw him in full throttle. Yeah, he looked great through 3 quarters, especially that first quarter. But throughout the whole game, he was just absolutely playing at his top uh, possible level. But put him on a minutes restriction. He doesn't need to play 40 minutes in the game or 32
well,
minutes in the game. He could have played 20, 25 minutes and still had an impact. And then he wouldn't
and
be
I
in this
think that's
position, possibly.
true. Well, I think that's also the question of before he went out. Remember, we didn't know. I think it was the game at the Knicks before he got traded. We knew he was out, but we didn't know what he was out for or the
I think
severity
that
of
was
it.
just a rest game.
Yeah. So when he came back and played after the trade, we didn't know the extent of any of his injuries because he was on a sitting rest game.
Well, he was out with an ab strain before and for the Lakers.
Yeah, but you're not going to minute restrict him the whole year. I mean, if he's
Not the
cleared,
whole
he's cleared.
year. You're going to minute
Yeah,
restrict him the first the you should minutes restrict him for at least the first game.
but
Obviously
he
they
didn't have.
didn't do that, and he'd had the ab strain. He was out for at least 2 or 3 games for the Lakers. He didn't play. I think it was against the Knicks, and he got traded that night. He was
It
out that
was,
Yep.
game.
but
30
the
minutes after the
problem,
game ended.
yeah,
Yep.
the problem is he wasn't sitting because of an injury. He was sitting because of rest. So
However,
if
he
we're sitting
had
at,
that injury already. The
So
I
injury he
know
was
that,
so
out the
it was
previous 2 games because of that injury.
so I
but
can
if you're,
confirm Sports Illustrated mentioned it was actually an abdominal injury or a strain. So it
yeah,
was a
so that's not
separate
even the same
injury.
thing.
Didn't you
Yeah,
What
just
he
say that
just
this
heard
was an
against the
abduct?
Rockets was his inner thigh.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
That's why I
yeah.
thought
So it's a
somebody
Yeah,
said
different
it's a
something
injury.
about
different injury.
It's
did
a
you say
different injury.
okay, gotcha. So he pulled his groin.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's what I had
essentially.
thought. When
Rest.
I thought I heard you say ab again. I'm like, he just had that injury. Put him on a minutes
No.
restriction. If he got
Adductor
okay, so then I just
out the
take
day
back
to
what I
game.
said. Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. No, but
Also,
but but hold. Let me just say something real quick, Nick, and I'll give you the
yep,
floor on it. I will say this, and Baywood, I will agree with you. This he's had a different injury. It seems every other month.
Oh my
It's been
gosh.
either his ankle, his knee, his abductor, his groin. His wrist. At one point, he fell on it.
His
Uh,
back.
His
He
back.
gets
He's had a
back
different injury.
spasms. Cammy sounds like you, but you pull through you actually play through it.
Okay, that's your first shot. You don't get another one on this topic. But but no, so I would agree. Maybe a minutes restriction might be good for him. Because the percentage of him just getting hurt, and I think this is where it comes into the fact that this is a business. Is that your goal as an organization is to build a championship contender, and what the Mavericks have done is chose to look the other way with the injuries and say, look, if we can get him on the court healthy for a few games, we will be unstoppable. The problem is you got to get him on the court healthy for a few games.
If he
And I think
dunks, he's gonna land on his foot, he'll roll his foot, and
exactly
he's out.
Nico Harrison has rolled the dice,
yep.
and right now he busted. But again, we can't judge it until after the playoffs, wherever they land. If they go out and find a way to win a championship this year, it was the best trade you could think of.
Did you see
Yep.
Mark Cuban? Did you see Mark Cuban smiling after Luka drained the 3 and then stared down the Mavericks bench? He was smiling, but you could see the pain through his smile that he's like, "Why did I give up my majority
Again,
share?"
and I will say this much too on the trade. the game against the Mavericks only showed us what Luka can do. It just reminded people who Luka was, because Luka was he's been out for a long time. But had the tables been flipped and AD played in that game and he drops 20, I'm not sure we're looking at the trade of, wow, that was a bad trade. Because I do not see the Lakers beating the Mavericks with their full roster. They do not have any bigs, and I had to go back and check a few box scores. They have no bench.
Yeah.
They have no bench, and that's cute to say here. Oh, well, they all play defense. Well, that's nice, but you gotta score. You're not
Similar
going to
with the
hold every
Knicks.
team. You're not going to hold every team under 100 and something points or 110 points. It's not going to happen. You gave up 130 something to the Jazz. The Jazz were in the Cooper Flag lottery, basically.
So I want to
So
hear
I mean,
Nick's opinion on this after
yeah.
I finish this point. But
So
from a fan base perspective, I don't think anybody is mad on the Lakers side that they got Luka. They're probably relieved that Anthony Davis is gone. However, almost everyone from the Mavericks is upset that they lost Luka. So from a fan base perspective, the Mavericks lost. However, there are the fans that are like, well, Luka's a crybaby, he cries to the refs too much. He doesn't play. If he doesn't score, then he's not playing hard and he's out of shape and he looks like a big jelly donut. Forget it. If he looks like a jelly donut and he could drop 40, 50, 60, 70 at one point on any given night, you rock with it.
before Nick, you answer that question, let's go back a few minutes because I know I got a point in. You were about to say something and I accidentally cut you off, so I'm gonna turn the floor back over to you.
Well, I was actually just going to mention going back onto Anthony Davis with the multitude of injuries. Charles Barkley calls them street clothes for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the next injury might be something that has to do with like the headband and might rip his unibrow off, and he'll be out for like 6 months. But no, I'm just kidding. But the real point I was going to make, um, mark your calendars for April 9th. Lakers at Mavericks. It is one of the Mavericks' last 3 games of the season, and it's going to feel like a must-win game for them there. So, and everyone should be back by then. So we're gonna find out for real what's gonna happen. So
Put an asterisk next to it though, because if the Lakers don't need the game,
true, they could sit.
they could sit. Which
They could sit.
actually, if we can table that right there and move on to our next topic, because that goes perfectly into it, load management.
Nick, I'm going to let you start with this because I feel like I've been talking this whole episode so far.
Yeah,
No, that's
Nick,
totally
let me
fine.
ask you. Nick, let me ask you a
Yep.
question on load management.
Sure. Yes.
Are you for or against load management when it comes to players at any level in the NBA or NFL if there are players load managing out there too?
So I'm looking at this through two different lenses. One, as a player or former athlete, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a competitor, you want to be out there, right? The name of the game is winning.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've seen, there are some games that really don't have a whole lot of meaning, especially in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand why a player may need a night off in terms of, say they're playing 3 games in 5 days or something, then they're traveling cross country and stuff. And maybe they're playing a lot of it. I can understand that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we can't run players into the ground. Look at the Knicks. Thibodeau plays nothing but his starting 5, and then they're burnt out by April. They're exhausted, and you can see it. They just look tired.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other perspective is as a fan. Fans pay good money to see, especially stars.
Mm-hmm.
Fans pay good money to see them play. And I get it. The Wizards stink, and there's no real need for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander to play a meaningless game against the Wizards. But at the same time, there's people that are going to fill that stadium, that arena, to see Shea Gilgeous-Alexander play.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand why fans don't like it either. Um, it's a tough situation, or at least a tough, like, I can't really pick a side, because if I play, especially now that I've crossed into the 30 range, oh God, but you know, it's about keeping your body as healthy as possible. If I need a night off, you need a night off, so that way you can perform at a high level in April and in May and hopefully June for some teams, or in football, January and February for playoffs. Um, but if I'm paying good money to go get a seat at a game, I better see you, know? I think it's something that the NBA does have to figure out, especially. I feel like it's brought up the most in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And even with they do have you have to play a certain number of games to be all NBA. I think it's 60 or 65.
65, I believe.
Yeah, so it does affect accolades potentially, and in turn affects contract extensions. You can't get a supermax unless you're an all NBA.
Mm-hmm.
In order to be all NBA, you got to play 65 games. So now you're talking, right, 82 game regular season, you get 17 games off max, and that's before injuries. So
Yeah.
is that a fine enough line for players? So I think there's already things in place for them to want to play, to get money, to put their teams in positions so that you can take a couple games off at the end of the year before playoffs. But if it's December and Kawhi's sitting to rest a finger, that get out of here. Like
I
that.
was gonna ask you that question and just tangent a little bit off of that, because I was actually thinking Kawhi when you said that.
That's who I have
Do
on my
we
screen right now.
do we think that this has been an issue for a while and then Kawhi just exasperated it? Or do we look at it and say, Kawhi, you're the reason that we do this,
I
that we're
think
all upset?
I think Kawhi was a big reason because it was basically in his contract and announced preseason that he was going to be incorporating uh, load management in the season. So from
Yeah.
2019, the season of 2019 to 2020, Kawhi Leonard played 57 games. So he missed,
Mm-hmm.
what was that, roughly 25 games, Nick? From 2020 to 2021, he played 52 games, so he missed 30 games. In
Mm-hmm.
2022 to 2023, he also played 52 games, so he missed another 30 games. Some of them might have been to injury, but you know damn well that a good portion of those were, in quotation marks, load management. And the Clippers were one of those teams that were supposed to be title contenders and disappointed come playoff time because it didn't look like they had any chemistry at all whatsoever because they didn't play any games together. Even when Kawhi was playing, Paul George might have been sitting because Paul George was also load managing or
Mm-hmm.
injured. So by the time they had no idea how to play with each other, by the time they got to the playoffs, that they're getting bounced by a Denver, or they're when it was Luka by himself, it was going 7 games. It's like I think it's
Mm.
definitely more of a focus that Kawhi was doing it, but now it's sort of popular around the league. And as Nick was saying, he pointed out the super max. If you have a max contract, you better be playing, especially the home games. But
Mm.
you need to be playing, at least if you're not actually injured, not cleared by doctors, like Nick just said, if you have a finger and you're resting it, get out of here. I, I I don't get paid to play sports. I played through a dislocated finger with torn ligaments through a flag football game playoff for that I had to pay to play. So there, there's the want to play, and it just doesn't seem like Kawhi gives a damn about playing basketball sometimes. And he does have an injury history. But at the same time, you're skipping a lot of games. So it's definitely Kawhi was the one that pointed it out, but you see maybe a Giannis take off a game, or LeBron does it all the time now. I mean, he's old, so I mean, he damn near has the right to. But I can't remember. I don't know how many times he's even played 82 games in the season, because the first how many
I
seasons
think
did
twice.
how many LeBron didn't have any serious injuries until he joined the Lakers. So he definitely
Yeah.
load managed prior to Kawhi. So it's not Kawhi being the first one that did it. He's just the one that made it popular, because he won the championship in Toronto. He goes to the Clippers. Oh, I'm going to load manage. This is what I did in Toronto. Nobody paid attention to in Toronto until he was against Golden State and just running through the playoffs and hit that crazy shot against the Sixers to beat the clock. But yeah, it definitely started with him, but it's taken note across the league. So my opinion is, if you got a super max contract or a max contract, you better be playing.
When Kawhi landed on Zaza Pachulia's foot, that sparked and started his load management, because he was never the same after that. And that's actually what got him traded to Toronto. And he looked fine in Toronto. We'll just throw that out there. And they ended up winning a championship. And, then he went to the Clippers, and he was never the same ever again after that. I'm going to give a quick story on load management, because I am a fan of basketball who was affected by load management. My friend down in DC, Christopher Thielen, I'm name dropping right here, got
Shout
me
out to
tickets.
Christopher.
Shout out to Chris. I got me tickets to Wizards Cleveland game. And the Wizards I think John Wall was still playing there. Bradley Beal was coming off the bench after an injury. I'm a huge Bradley Beal fan, so I'm a little disappointed what he's doing in Phoenix, but I'm a huge fan. And I got tickets to see him, and we paid not that much. We were kind of in the nosebleed section, but it was still cool. And we were walking to the game, and just for a thought for some people, the game was at 4 in the afternoon. I believe it was a Saturday. We found out around 3:15 LeBron was not playing in the game as we were pulling in.
Sounds like shades of the All-Star game.
Can I tell
I
you?
was just about to say that.
Yeah, I can. Well, I can tell you worse almost, because the All-Star game this year was it? Where was it? It was in Golden State.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is Washington at the time. So this was, I think they only had one game in Washington. The disappointment on those kids' faces outside that they weren't going to get to see LeBron play on his, I think that was the only trip he had left to Washington, D.C. Those kids didn't get to see him play. They had to wait a whole year to possibly get tickets to see LeBron play the next year. And we almost walked out of the arena too. I'm a Bradley Beal fan, so my friend's like, "We'll stay because you want to see Bradley Beal." Kyrie went off for 30 something that game. It was great. Bradley had 20. John Wall had a double double. Kevin Love had almost a triple double. The other players were great, but when you go to a game to see a specific player and you cannot see that player because they choose not to play, it hurts. And I'm older, so for me, it was a little sting. But for that 10-year-old who was going to go back to school the next day and tell all his friends he got to see LeBron James play, for that parent that saved up to buy that expensive ticket, it's a slap in the face. And the worst part was, it was the topic on ESPN the next day, LeBron sitting that game. And then, oh, by the way, they had a doubleheader and he played the next night. So I'm not for load management, but I will say this. I'm all for players sitting out for rest. However, my solution is this. I think you need to sit down with your GM at the beginning of the season and you pick 5 games that you are going to sit out. And they can't be arenas you only visit once a year. So it should be 5 of your home games or your in-conference games to where you can go back. And you have to tell them before the season starts which games you're sitting and why. And then if you get hurt, you then have to turn around and play in those games and make up for it. That is my solution, because I don't think anybody has an issue if we tell you ahead of time before you buy your tickets, someone's not playing. You can always choose to play, but as of right now, you're not playing. So that's my solution.
Because LeBron's box office, so they sold the arena. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Not many people were selling the arena out just to go watch. Bradley Beal's a great player, but he's not box office.
Well, it's
Kyrie and LeBron,
Washington,
yeah,
but
so yeah. John Wall was not box office. Was he drawing crowds? Yes, but when LeBron James is coming into town, that's box office. Kobe's coming into town, box office.
And I think, Nick, I would push back on one thing you said, and I'm only pushing back because I agree with what you're saying, but I don't agree to an extent. I believe, because you used the example of SGA not playing in Washington.
I just said a hypothetical, but
Yeah, hypothetical. Well, Washington's going to suck for a while, so it's a good hypothetical. But my point would be this. When you are a star, you have fans in all 50 states and every NBA city. If it's your only trip out to that city and you are not hurt, you should be playing. Too often do we see players sit, oh, well, the team sucks, I'm not going to play. Okay, but the fans that's not the fans' fault. This is their only chance to see you, and you're not going to play in the game because the team's terrible? Why don't you sit a home game against a bad team? Sitting a game is sitting a game. And then at the end of the year, it's, oh, well, we didn't make the playoffs by one game. Well, if you won game 2 instead of sitting out, you would have not had to worry about it. In some backwards fashion, every game in an 82-game season matters. We don't believe it because it's a lot of games. But chances are your record is what your record is because you took some games off.
Hell, hockey is a much more physically intense sport. They're getting slammed into the boards, and pucks getting at 115 miles an hour hit into their legs while they're blocking shots and stuff, and sticks are getting jammed in their face. It's like, and you don't see people are playing hockey until they're damn near 40, and you don't see them load managing on the second half of a back-to-back or even the
And
first half of a back-to-back.
I will say this about all sports. And I was having the argument with somebody before a while ago. I said every sport has their own injury history. Some sports you wear pads, some sports you don't. Some sports, you get thrown into stuff, walls, siding. Some sports you don't. You go into chairs. Some don't have anything, a la soccer. There's a huge field. It's very hard to run into something. But you get injured differently in different sports, and the effect on your body is different. The one thing all sports have in common is training. The training that you put your body through to be able to sustain a full season, whether that's football, basketball, hockey, baseball, rugby, any sport. If you aren't training correctly, you open yourself up to injury. That also goes with load management and sitting out games. If you sit out because you feel your body needs to rest, all right, then let that be it. But you don't need to rest 4, 5, 6 days a week. You miss one game and then move on and then apologize for it later. We have players in sports, and I'll use football as an example because this actually pisses me off, and I've been saying it for years. We turn around and we say, and other sports too, we clinched our playoff spot, we're done. Okay, you have 2 games left on your season. Well, we don't need to win, so we're going to sit players. How does that help the average fan who's coming to see you?
Also,
Ticket prices aren't any cheaper.
Also, look at Lamar doing that in the playoffs and what happens every time they did that at the last game of the season.
I'm not a fan of, if you want to take your playbook and not use your whole playbook, okay. If you only want to play your starters 4 or 5 plays, okay. But to not show up, and this is the NBA too. We clinched, we're going to sit our stars. To not show up, that's where we get into issues with load management and the product in all sports. And hockey does it too. So I don't hear no hockey players saying anything. You clinch the playoffs, you guys sit players too. All sports, when we clinch, we shut people down. As a fan, that is potentially my only time to see them live, and they don't show up. There's no difference game 82 seeing it or in game 14 seeing it. Sitting is sitting. Someone's paying to see you when you're not showing up. So I am not for load management, but I am for, before the season starts, picking a handful of games that you will not be participating in, letting everybody know so they can plan accordingly. And I think that gets rid of load management. Any parting thoughts on this, you guys? Baywood, I'll start with you.
No, I kind of agree with that. I don't think there's any, off the top of my head, a better solution to it at the moment. I mean, it obviously needs to be, experimented with first. But you don't see rookies load managing like you do the All-Stars. It just seems like there's too much player control. That's why it's like, oh, well, you're on a supermax. I don't need to play in the dunk contest. I don't need to participate in the 3-point shooting contest or any of the All-Star contests. And we have people that aren't even in the the even in the league participating in that, which we could have a discussion about that another time because there is hope for that. But fans, I hate to tell you, but fans didn't pay to see somebody from the G League dunking in the dunk contest. They paid to see LeBron. They paid to see Giannis. They paid to see John Morant, and we don't see any of these guys doing that. And on top of that, we deal with them, uh, you know, not even releasing that they're going to be out until game time decision. I can't tell you the amount of bets that I've lost because I'm like, oh, I think let's say the Grizzlies are going to win tonight, and then John Morant's just out for no reason. It's just like it's not fair across the board, and like you said, it less for me, more for the kids that they idolize these people. And
Yeah.
I have a story that's kind of, it has nothing to do with load management, but it's just how I felt as a kid. I was at the Steelers training camp and they sign autographs at the end. Um, and they just walk down. There's a whole line of people. People are just trying to throw people out of the way to try to get Troy Polamalu or Ben Roethlisberger's autograph. Some like, I don't know, 45, 50-year-old um, shoved their picture in front of my hat that Ben Roethlisberger was reaching for, and he took their picture and then walked away, and signed their picture and then handed it back and then walked away. That's how I feel it is for kids when they can't see their favorite player play. Like that's just like a heartbreaking moment. You've been waiting,
Yeah.
you've been watching all season, and all of a sudden it's right at your fingertips, and then you look up and LeBron's not playing, or for your particular example, or Kyrie's not playing, Luka's not playing. Like, come on.
Yeah. And I think we know in sports, we've all played it, we've all seen injuries at every level, whether on TV or in person. It can be taken away from you very quickly. The team you see today, the player you see today, may not be the player you see tomorrow because they either A, could be traded, or B, they can get an injury and then they're not the same. I mean, look at Sean Livingston. You know, I'll give the other analogy. I hate saying it, but look at Kevin Durant. He tore his Achilles and then had to sit out a year afterwards. So anything is possible at that moment. And I think they do themselves a disservice when they just sit out for the hell of it and think that, oh, I'll be back tomorrow, or like there's always tomorrow. There's not always tomorrow.
That's why
So, Nick, how about you?
a minutes restriction could help with the load management issue too. But yeah, Nick, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, for the most part, I agree with what everybody is saying in terms of I think if there is too much of a not necessarily player control. Uh, I think this sounds bad, but I am all in favor of players getting their money, but
Getting what?
getting their money,
Oh,
like
yes.
big contracts. But I think there's too much money in sports in terms of contracts.
the NBA streaming deal thing that they got with Amazon. How many billions of dollars was that? And yet viewership is way down this season. But they got their money. It's a business at the end of the day, and I think the players now more than ever treat it like a business when
Mm-hmm.
they're incorporating load management. It's a risk assessment. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars. Like you said, Kevin Durant tore his Achilles. That year that he missed could have led to future earnings if he had
Mm-hmm.
played. So, and again, as much as if I was in the NBA, you can give me a $300 million contract. Absolutely. I'll sign for $300, but um, I don't know if it's something that has to do, maybe collective bargaining when they renegotiate, maybe lower the salary cap, if there even is a salary cap, because these teams just pay luxury taxes, do what they need to
Mm-hmm.
do.
Yeah, I was gonna say the NBA is weird.
Yeah. So, but there's just so much money in sports, and then with the whole gambling thing, the leagues are getting a cut anyway. So I'm not, gonna branch off into some wild conspiracy, but
Mm-hmm.
I think if there's, a minutes restriction could work, to curve the load management thing. If you're just taking a day off, take a day off when you're getting paid that much money, it's kind of messed up to the fans. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think it's a business, but then I think at the same time, these players and some players have to realize that it's a
Yeah,
privilege. Not
absolutely.
everybody gets to play in the NBA, and not everybody will ever have that opportunity. And if they need to look any further than that, look at the G League. Those were all players who would die to play in the NBA full time
Mhm.
and not have to probably have a part-time job doing something else. So privilege versus business. I think that's where it's going to come down to. But you're right. I think we'll see it in future collective bargaining agreements. Unfortunately, it won't
Yeah,
affect our superstars now, as it probably shouldn't. Some of them have been great, but the players coming up, the next generations, the Cooper Flags, the Ace Baileys, the rookies we have this year, it'll affect them. So before we transition, I want to give one more basketball topic, and I'm going to shout out. We had a GOAT retire this week in one of my favorite basketball players of all time, Diana Taurasi. She hung up her shoes this week, the white Mamba, as arguably, I would say, the greatest female basketball player to ever play the game. I've seen a lot of them. I've seen videos from the other ones that unfortunately, I couldn't see them in person. And I will say that I still believe Diana is number one. She has won on every single level: high school player of the year, 3 UConn championships, 3 WNBA championships. Oh my God, 6 Olympic medals, 4 FIBA championships, and several international championships, being that they don't have a league over here during the actual basketball calendar for men. So she had to play overseas. And she's the WNBA's all-time leading scorer right now. I think she's 3,000 more points in second place. I I don't know how you don't call her the GOAT. I would welcome arguments from anybody on that in general, but I felt this was a fitting place to give Connecticut's finest a little homage to DT as the greatest of all time, per the late great Kobe Bryant, and just a lot of people who've seen basketball, women's basketball especially in general. So Diana is the GOAT. I don't know if anybody had anything they want to say about Diana. Have you ever seen her play or anything like that? But I have, and I've played against her a long time ago. It was a challenge. She is definitely the greatest.
Um,
So,
Nick, did you want to go first, or did you have an opinion, or do you want me to jump on it?
I have no opinion on the subject. Diana Taurasi is the greatest women's basketball player of all time.
Uh, I,
Well, or now until we find a new GOAT. But until that time comes, she's number one. She's the most accomplished women's basketball player ever. In terms of high school, college, the pros, she actually played, like Cam said, played in Turkey. I believe for a few years, won there, won 3 Olympic gold medals. She won 3 world championships as well, FIBA world championships, 3 in a row, 6 gold medals in a row in the Olympics. Named to the WNBA's 15th, 20th, and 25th anniversary teams, which kind of goes to show you how long she's been in the WNBA.
04.
Yep, where she was also Rookie of the Year. She was also first team All NBA as a rookie. Interestingly enough, she's only a one-time WNBA MVP in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that, you know, whatever. She has 3 WNBA rings, 6 Olympic gold medals, 2 national championships. Is that right? Or 3? 3.
3.
3 in a
Yeah,
row.
3 in the
3 in a
WNBA, but I
row.
think she won like 7 in Russia too.
Yeah, she won. She's been a bit, bottom line with her, she's been a winner everywhere she's gone.
Yeah.
And I think we can say that.
It's going to be hard to top because, not only was she the most accomplished WNBA, but the fact that it was along with the longevity that, I don't know if anybody could be that great for that long again. Winning 6 straight golds, in the Olympics is tough enough as it is. So, I mean, you don't even see NBA players playing in 6 straight often.
Yeah.
So
No, I think KD's at 4.
yeah. So 6 straight and to win gold every time. I mean, I feel sorry that the WNBA wasn't as popular globally as it is now, because I haven't seen her play in person, but I have seen the highlights on ESPN. I did see highlight tape from after she retired from her at UConn. It would have been great to see her possibly play on the Connecticut Sun, but that didn't happen. I think she played in Phoenix, right, for the majority of
Yep.
her time.
Yes.
Whole
So,
career.
Phoenix.
oh yeah,
Whole
whole
career.
career. Yeah. So, to do it all with one team, that's pretty legendary. So, congratulations, and hopefully she stays relevant in the WNBA community.
Yeah, I'm gonna just say one last thing, and then we'll switch topics to our next topic. Having seen Diana play basketball, and I know we live in Connecticut. For viewers who don't understand this, there's nothing like basketball in Connecticut for UConn. If you're a UConn women's basketball fan, when you go to the arena, it's sold out every time. When you watch it on TV, you have to double check because it could be a men's game because it's sold out every time. It's loud. They go on the road, they're everybody's Super Bowl game. And when Diana was playing, we weren't on Facebook as much as we are now. We weren't on YouTube. We didn't have Twitter, TikTok. All that stuff was in the works for years later. And to still be a rock star and go to the games and see all those people cheering, it's something we will never see again because social media has just taken over. And if you look up her games overseas, having stayed up and watched a few of them in Russia when she was playing there, or Turkey, those arenas are packed out too. They know exactly who Diana Taurasi is. And it makes me laugh because we talk in an age of social media of our Caitlin Clarks, our Angel Reeses, of, well, they would have been huge if they were alive back then. Well, if we had social media then, do you know how big some of these players would have been? Do the equivalent to the men, and I want to just pick both your brains on this last quick topic. If we had social media for the late night game when Allen Iverson went to Los Angeles to play Kobe Bryant in a regular season game, do you know how the ratings would have been on that game if we had social media? The extent now, if we had it then? Every big game that we would have seen when Vince Carter dunked on the 7-2 dude in the Olympics,
Yep.
We're looking at it now, but social media wasn't anywhere near then what it is now. I mean, we still can't find the tape of LeBron getting dunked on, but we can see tape of other people dunking on 7-footers. So I just think it just goes to show you how great her career has been, and a good chunk of people who are fans haven't even seen her play because times have changed. But I digress and just say Diana Taurasi, the GOAT, greatest women's basketball player of all time. And to be honest, if we're going to take straight basketball and you look at IQ and what she's done in her impact, she's an icon, basketball icon. So we're going to move on, though, to our next topic, and that is NIL. Name, image, likeness deals in college. For those people who don't know, if you are a college athlete, you can now receive money to be paid to play in college. You're not really being paid to play, they're being paid to use your name, image, and likeness. Let's clarify that. But obviously, you're good at what you do, and that's how you're getting your money. So I'm going to open it up to, we did Matt. Let's start with Nick on NIL deals. Are they good for college sports, athletics? What do you think?
I think they're good for Division One, but as collegiate sports as a whole, it's not good because there's going to be a huge discrepancy between Division Two and Division Three, where a Division Three athlete can't even get an athletic scholarship, but they can go get NIL money. But then again, what D3 athletes getting major NIL money? Like Cooper Flagg, who plays for Duke, he's got about a $5 million valuation, if I read that right. Let me check my source on that. Hold on. This was an article put out by the Fan. So like, I mean, I think it's great in terms of you can basically any sport, any gender can start making money based on their name, their image, and their likeness. If a school's selling your jersey, you should get a cut.
Yes.
Fair, absolutely fair. But I don't know what athlete is going to want to play D2, even if, say, the college is great, they're in a great system, because I think they're all looking for, the highest division. I'm going to be on TV, right? This kind of stuff. I just think there's going to be such parity in division between the divisions, unless somehow the NCAA figures out a way to say, all right, to the universities where, okay, we're going to get a cut of the NIL deal or something because you're playing in the NCAA, right? And then maybe do like some sort of shared revenue thing where some of the smaller schools can get a little bit of extra money to use for recruiting and things like that. It's not going to be an even playing field ever, right? Alabama's always going to be a bigger school for sports than Central Connecticut. Shout out to UCAM, a Central Connecticut alumnus. But
number one
that's
in the
just kind of
by the way. Just throwing it out there.
right. But that's just kind of how it goes. The Central's not a bigger school than Alabama. So, I mean, for the athletes, it's great. They're getting paid tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some of the top ones are in the millions. It's great. Generational wealth. Get your money. While you can. But I think in the long run and for the full benefit of sports, I think it takes away from because collegiate sports is the highest level of amateur sports, right? And then you go pro. So I kind of feel like it takes a little bit of that integrity away. That, not to say that they don't care about being a Georgia Bulldog, but they're not a Georgia Bulldog first. I don't think. I think they're there to get their money, do enough to put themselves in a position to get even more money later when they go pro. which fine, it's the business of sports. But you know, it, I just again, it's me being like a fan versus a player perspective kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But so like as much as I'm for it for the athletes, I know it's gonna create it's almost an unfair advantage for the bigger schools. I feel like so.
Okay, I
That's
can understand that. I think that you had some good points. I know Matt and I were talking earlier in the week on some stuff, so I know he's got some stuff to weigh in on. So Matt, what do you think? Is NIL good for sports?
NIL, I have a different opinion on, but I actually have a question for both of you just to clarify what's going on here. So, I do understand the whole NIL, and we've talked about this numerous times over the past, few years.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say the Bryce Underwood thing. He
Mm-hmm.
signs with LSU, and obviously then he uncommits and goes to Michigan for 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
Is he getting $10 million guaranteed for just playing, and then on top of that, he's getting a cut of the jerseys and anything other merchandise that has his name on it, or is that incorporated in the $10 million that he signs?
So let's that's a great question. So the way I interpreted that and was reading up on it, because obviously I'm an LSU fan, I was very unhappy about that. I think we got to first start off and say this: the school does not pay you in an NIL. The school itself is not paying you.
Mm-hmm.
Companies and boosters pay you.
Right.
So in this case, it was a booster offering him the $10 million, which had nothing to do with jersey sales or anything like that.
Okay.
So it was
that's
just a
crazy.
flat. It was just him saying, "Look, 10 million for you to come play at the school." Now, it might have been 10 million for 3 years, 4 years. They didn't specify, but it did not include jersey sales or any of that because you can't know how much the jersey sales are going to be going into the season.
Right. That was why my question was what it was.
Yeah,
If it was
yeah,
the school or booster, because I got mixed, uh,
yeah.
readings on it. So
So
knowing
yeah, it's
that,
10 million. It's 10 million for him to go to there. If that's broken up over his time there, we don't know. We just know it's 10 million, but that won't include anything else with name, image, likeness, because it's
so
Michigan. He's probably going to get more money doing other things.
so he could very well walk out, not saying that it's gonna be 10 more million, but there's a possibility that he could make another 10 million on top of that. There's
Exactly.
no ceiling. Anyway,
No, no cap.
my opinion on it is I think players should get their money. I was a huge NCAA college football video game player, and I was very disappointed with not being able to see my favorite players in the game because they didn't want to get paid, or they didn't want to pay the players for it. It's nice to be able to pick up the game and play your favorite player in whatever game you're talking about. So from a fan's perspective, I think it's cool. However, when you look at the percentage of even like excluding college sports, but let's just say NFL players, by the time they retire, I think it was very close to 80% within 2 years. 80% of the players go broke. They don't know what to do with their money. And at that point, they're older adults. When they sign their, uh, like 22, 23, sometimes 24, depending on how many years you stay in college.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So let's bring, I would say a famous one of this is Antonio Brown. He spent millions of dollars on unnecessary things like showing up to training camp in a helicopter and buying umpteen Rolls Royces and, being this fancy guy. And then all of a sudden you see that he has no money to even pay for restaurants that he goes out to. So not to say that he's broke because he's probably not now, but the a lot of players are struggling and need to find jobs after when they were well off when they retired. So my point to this is giving these players money younger, and then they have the ability to then sign an NFL contract or go to the NBA or the MLB or any professional sport. There needs to be some level of education that goes with it on money management because you're handing somebody at a very young age an unfathomable amount of money to the average American or the average person in the world, and you're just expecting them to know and do the right thing with it. Yes, they have the freedom to spend the money on whatever they want. However, buying a $2 million house without even realizing how taxes work, it's a cause for concern when you start handing young players and young kids with no financial background or possibly growing up in an area with less education or an area with they grew up in poverty, and then you end up making stupid decisions with your money. So I think that if they can get some education in there or some agents that can help with that rather than just worrying about getting them the best deal, then it can work out. But I'm a little concerned on that aspect of it.
Nick, what do you think? Based off what Matt said.
I mean, again, if an athlete's able to get that, with like Bryce Underwood, his name's Bryce Underwood, right? The
Yes.
Michigan quarterback.
Yes.
Yep.
If he's able to get $10 million, and I didn't even know his name until Cam said he's potentially going to be LSU's quarterback, and then it come to find out he's going to Michigan solely for money. So kind of that's my opinion on that. So Bryce Underwood better win a national championship and or a Heisman Trophy. But I I don't know. I like you're already going to school for free. You're already getting room and board. You already have nutrition plans and access
Yeah.
to doctors and trainers and all this kind of stuff. Um, I think overall, I don't think it's good for sports because
Mm.
it kind of takes away from the nature of sports and
Do you have
competition.
do you have any
Unless there's been, Mhm,
do you have
go
any
ahead.
opinion on the financial management perspective though, in terms of like players not knowing what to do with their money when they get this insane lump sum at what Bryce Underwood's probably like 18?
Yeah. I have words on that when you're done, Nick.
I think that's on the player. What they do with their money is that's their decisions, but they have to be able to accept the consequences and the accountability of their accounts. So if they're wanting to go out to clubs and spend money on cars and things like that, unfortunately, that's on them. So I don't really have an opinion per se. I hope they have advisors or surround themselves with people that want to help them, not just because an agent's getting 15% of $100 million contract. You know what I mean? Um,
Mhm.
and I think players, the modern professional athlete, has done a lot more wising up in terms of how they market themselves, who they align themselves with brands and things like that. Um, so I think there's much more financial literacy among athletes and in sports in general because there's more money in it for them, and
Mhm.
how to be able to take advantage of themselves as a brand, um, and as an athlete. So I would hope that in a perfect world they all keep all their money. Obviously, there are cases where they do not, but at that point, if you're over 18, you're an adult. So that's my stance on that.
I think the financial literacy part is the key that Matt was saying, and I personally do have a theory on it, and I would love to see schools implement it. We talk so much about student athlete, but we also talk about business. And I think that for some athletes, you should be tested. And I think if you have the potential to go straight to the league in a profession to where that will be what you are doing after college, then we should design courses in a way that will help you succeed for that. Because the
And
point of college is to help train you and get you ready for the real world in your respective career. We have to do that for athletes. Let's fully do that for athletes. I think that if they want, they have the opportunity to decide as a freshman if they are going to be an NBA, NFL, MLB, whatever player, then let's design their curriculum for that. If it does not work out after the 3-4 years, they can go back to school and get a degree in whatever they need to get a degree in. I think we don't spend enough time with people on taxes. I think different states have different taxes and have different tax amounts. You get everything coming to you in Texas. You do not in Connecticut, New York, or Massachusetts. So those are conversations that I'm with Nick, I believe, are on the kid, but they are also on the university because it is your job to educate them. That is why they are coming to your school, to make you money. And the more knowledge they have is the more money in turn you will make. So I think it's twofold. I think we need to educate the kids, but I think the school needs to play a big part of it as well. I'm all for NIL. I think these universities make millions, if not $1 billion a year. You know, we just watched Ohio State dismantle Notre Dame. I hate both those schools, but I'm not ignorant to the fact that those are the two most popular football programs in the history of football, and that they made a lot of money off of those two schools. And if you had a good game in that game, you should profit for it. Do we know how many Will Howard jerseys were sold after that game? Or that sensational freshman out of Ohio State, the receiver? He should profit off his name because the school is going to profit off his name. Now, should he make the same amount of money as the school? Probably not. Because like Nick said, we are giving them free education, free board, free doctors, free this, free that. But at the same time, that is your name and your abilities that got you to where you are, and that school is making money off of. Should you get a penny for every dollar? No, you should probably get more than that. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but should you get $50 per every 100? No. So I think we need to find a happy median in an amount. But realistically, I was going through the list. There's so many ways you can make money off NIL that I'm not really sure it would be fair to cap it at a certain number. Just to read off some things, you can make money signing autographs. You can make money at training camp, teaching camps, promoting products. I know we've seen players for Chipotle, for Subway, McDonald's, speaking engagements. What's it like to be a champion? You know, or just being on social media and having a social media account. So I think there's so many ways to make money. It's hard to cap it, but I do think that NIL is good for the student. But I do agree. I think it could hurt sports down the road at the different levels. But being that the schools aren't the ones paying you, it's their boosters and finding the endorsements yourself to an extent, you kind of control what your income is. So to an extent, your exposure might be bigger with a bigger school. But for example, if we're at Boston University and we're in Boston and we have a decent team and people around the city want me to promote it in Boston, I might be very big. I might pull out a couple $100,000 NIL deal in the city alone. So I think it does put a little more pressure back on the player because now they have to brand themselves. Where the school's giving you the platform, but you still need to do something because I'm not going to buy your jersey just because you're on the team. You need to show me that you're good on the team. Now, Cooper Flagg's different. We all knew who he was going into college. But I think the average person may have to work a little more at it. Matt, did you have a question for Nick on yours? I thought you said you might have a question.
No, I think the question was before you guys answered it before on whether that $10 million deal that, you know, when players just sign contracts, whether they're from boosters or not, if they get NIL on top of that. But obviously, we kind of went through that already. I think that was it.
Yeah, it's all name, image, and likeness. So
yeah,
he got $10 million to go to the school. We're kind of looking the other way on it, but he's going to make that school a lot of money just because the hype now around him.
So who was the big one that started this whole thing? Because I know Johnny Manziel got in trouble for, illegally signing, or not illegally, but it might have been at the time. It's just against policy, signing autographs and doing things behind the scenes for money while he was
So
in school.
yeah, so what it is you're not allowed to profit for basic sake. So you can get in trouble a lot of ways, and it's up to prove that you weren't making a profit. The biggest culprit, I think it was Cam Newton, is if someone says, "Here, sign my jersey," you can sign the jersey. But if they turn around and sell it in front of you, you're in trouble. So it's a knowing and a not knowing kind of thing. So everyone's been doing it, but not everybody's been getting in trouble with it. It's only those if you get caught kind of things. So it's been going on for a long time, paying people under the table. It's just we're only hearing about certain stories. I'll give you an example. It's not really NIL-ish, but like when I went to Central, as we said before, I won't say who, I was in study hall and there were people doing other people's homework for money. So it's not like we haven't always seen stuff. It's just it's now coming to the light as to what we're seeing and how it's not right.
Hell, you didn't need
Almost
it.
like a
You didn't
what?
need to just say people at Central and not say a name. I took money to do people's homework in college.
Well, he already said I went to Central, so I was just acknowledging that the school I went to.
Oh,
We don't
gotcha.
know where you went to school because we haven't said it on the thing yet. But I won't say which sport because that would kind of narrow down certain people. But like I did see it happening.
Mm.
Mhm.
There, I was approached to do somebody else's homework for money. So it is something that happens. People are constantly being paid to do things, and it's something that I think they were trying to get a hold of it with NIL. Excuse me. But it kind of just took off. The snowball was pushed down the hill, and now it's this big, massive thing where people are going to certain schools because of money. It may not even be their dream school, but they can get the money at that school. And actually, that'll transition well into the transfer portal because NIL is a reason some people transfer. We have a lot of issues with the transfer portal, but we've always had a transfer situation in college sports. How do you feel the state of the transfer portal is in 2024-2025 season? Matt, what do you think?
Um, well, the thing is I didn't have a problem with the transfer portal before NIL.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know that my opinion has changed on it. However, I don't think you should be able to transfer more than once. And I think is there still a penalty on it where you have to sit out a
No,
year? No?
no.
Well, I think when I was pro transfer portal, the penalty was they had the penalty. So I yeah, it does a disservice to the player, but I mean, rules are rules. If you're going to transfer just for NIL and popularity, then there's got to be some sort of penalty to it because you committed to a school originally. And you
Let
might
me.
have already had a scholarship at that school and you're transferring just to get, more money. It's just I don't like it personally, especially if you're signing like what you said with the booster
Yeah,
and you commit to a school, you got to commit to the school first, like you were saying with like I I don't know if it was you or Nick that said it, but somebody said uh, you're committing to being a Georgia Bulldog, but you're committing to the NIL first. I think
yeah,
you got to really love where you're playing, and you pick your school. That's where you play. You got to use the best of your ability there. If you think you're going to have a better opportunity and a better offense somewhere or a better defense somewhere else, you gotta take the penalty like you used to. I mean, you can't just hop from school to school and just to get your name out there.
Just to dive in a little deeper onto what you're saying, Matt, the penalty used to be you had to sit out for 1 year external conference and 2 years if you were to transfer in conference.
Yep.
Unless you got an NCAA waiver, which they were really not giving those out.
I think 1 year, in my opinion, is fine for all of it. But I think that's more than enough of a penalty because you don't want to have a player playing in college until he's like 24, 25 and then going pro. I mean, that sort of takes years off. But again, I personally liked when they had a penalty for it. More unless there was like I don't know, an extreme circumstance, like you said, where it gets waived. But
yeah,
other than that, I think that, prime example, you commit to LSU. You're going to LSU and you leave for NIL money. Yes, it's $10 million, which is crazy. But don't commit to another school first.
yeah.
So is there a condition where the boosters can say you can't transfer? Is that worked in like the
I think that
agreements?
would have to be. Yeah, I would think that would have to be in the contract that's signed.
I
We don't
think
get those contracts though.
it'd be in their contract how they stipulate it. But obviously, if you're transferring, you're getting more money elsewhere than the boosters are giving you. So I'm sure you don't care at that point.
Because if Underwood spends 1 year there, say for some reason he gets beat out to be the starting quarterback, which I doubt, but let's just say.
Yeah, fair.
And then he transfers to Miami next year when Carson Beck leaves.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to his $10 million NIL money from the booster from Michigan?
It depends how they broke that up. If they lump summed it up front and said, we're giving you $10 million to come to Michigan, and there's no stipulations, he went to Michigan, I would assume he would get all the money. Now, if we're saying we're going to give you $2.5 million a year for 4 years, and you leave after a year, I'm assuming you forfeit the rest of it.
Yeah. You forfeit the rest. That's what I would think too.
But I'm sure these boosters are smart, and these contracts are very stipulating. So if you're going to leave, it's going to be for someone who's going to offer you way more money, or you collected your money up front and then you can do what you want. But chances are it's probably a year by year basis. His was probably just lump summed because there's also the chance of him going to Michigan and sucking or getting hurt and then not playing. And then what do? Then you're $10 million in the hole.
Yeah.
So I think it depends how they set up their contracts. Nope, you're good. What do you think?
Thinking about all of this now, excuse me, I think the whole like NIL and transfer. Excuse me, got a cough. Hang on one. Sorry about that. Don't want the people hearing my nasty cough. Anyway, because back in the day when you heard about like money and recruits and stuff, it was always violation stuff.
Yes.
I think the combination of the transfer portal and NIL is now basically a recruiting loophole because you mentioned the university's not directly offering these kids money. Boosters are. And boosters, I don't think, are under any guise of the NCAA recruiting rules. So, I mean,
they are not.
You know darn well the schools are kind of nudging the boosters, saying, "Hey, we want this guy, but we can't directly give him stuff." So they're doing it. So, but if it's not breaking a rule by a technicality, give them $10 million.
Well, it's funny you said that.
Schools,
I think it'd be nice if we could not interview, but if you could poll college students at the highest level and say, college athletes, are you at the school you want to be at, or are you there because they're paying you? Don't tell me who you are. Just curious as to what your thing is. Because we get some of these kids. I'm going to use Arch Manning as an example. Arch Manning, I believe, was in school in Noonan, Georgia, if I'm correct. High school, Noonan, Georgia. And he went to Texas. Georgia was on the come up, and I'm quite certain with the rest of the world that Arch Manning would have started at the University of Georgia over almost any quarterback. Georgia had a better receiver class at the time than Texas did when he got there. All we heard about was Arch Manning's $3.5 million NIL deal, I believe. Do we think that Texas was his original choice? Because at the time, Texas was not in the SEC, remember? They were in the Big 12 still.
And he would have had, and he was sitting behind Ewers, right?
Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would have been behind Quinn Ewers or whoever the quarterback was anyway. Whereas, even if he came to Georgia, chances are he would have beaten Carson Beck because he's 10 times better quarterback than Carson Beck is. And we've only seen him take maybe 30 snaps on the season. So I think NIL does play a huge deal in that. And I also think the transfer portal, we see people leaving all the time because they don't get the money. I'm not a fan of players sitting out a year. I think you should be allowed to play the following year.
Mhm.
But I think you should only be allowed to transfer once, unless there's an extreme circumstance. So get it right the first time, or the next time better be it.
Yeah.
But there's always been loopholes because you can transfer down and not sit out, or you can transfer up and not sit out. So we have a history of it, and I don't care about the sitting out part. If you're transferring, you're transferring. In conference, out of conference, for whatever reason.
So do we
I'm kind of
dare to start a GoFundMe for let's title it NIL booster, and then petition to sign Nick Persempieri to the WestCon D3 football team?
Well, I think
Oh,
Nick's
God.
probably run out of eligibility at this point, and I
I
don't know if
also
he'll
already
come.
graduated from the school, so I don't think I get my eligibility back
I don't
unless I
think
do a
he.
second undergrad. I don't know how that works.
Plus, I don't. Nick, do you want to put your body through
Go
that
Wolves, baby, go Wolves.
Well,
Say that again?
we don't know what they are anymore. They've changed their logo like 10 times since we've graduated.
Well, they are the Wolves now.
Okay. It
Okay.
was the Colonials when we were there.
Yes, we were human. Now we're wolves. We're
Oh, well, animals. What do you know?
yeah.
Let me present a question to you both on this because we're looking at the transfer portal, and this was a hot button issue with it also. Players had to sit out a year if they transferred to different schools, but coaches
Mhm.
could quit or leave voluntarily and not have to sit out. Do we think that that's right and that's fair, being that you
And
have a
they're getting
kid who
paid.
committed to play for you, and then you leave and you're eligible to coach at another school right away?
Depends. Are we saying it in a way that, let's say, the coach had a year left on his deal and then he quits and then goes somewhere else? Or are we talking
You
about his contract's up and he decides to switch schools? Because it's a little different because there's scholarships involved with kids, and this is just a contract signed between a coach and a team.
so to be honest, irrelevant because you can quit and leave at any time. They're just paying you back. They're paying you off, or they'll pay the payout. So, but I can see what you're saying. But we'll say that for all intents and purposes, it's your rookie year. Your coach just signed a 5-year deal. It's his year 2 on the deal, so he should be there for the rest of your career.
Gotcha.
Is
And
it right that you step on campus and he quits and then goes to coach at another school? By the way, you're locked into your contract. So now if you transfer based off the old rules to go play for him, you have to sit out a year.
in that sense, if you're leaving, if like kids are committing to play for you, let's say Belichick is now the North Carolina's coach, right?
Yeah.
If
Right.
there's plenty of high schoolers and I guess people that are transferring there to play under Belichick. So he's under the first year of what is it, a 3-year deal, something like
Yeah.
that. It might even be longer, it might be 5, but let's just say it's a 3-year deal. And he just decides, oh, I'm gonna go to another school. Is that what you mean? Like quitting and leaving? I think
For
that
whatever reason.
if it's allowed to trade coaches in college sports, which I don't think it is, because in the NFL, like Sean Payton just decided that he was gonna, I think it was retire from the Saints, and then he got traded to the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different situation because it's the NFL. But in NCAA, you have people committing to play to you. Yeah. I mean, if it's not like he's his contract's up and he's going to another team, I don't see why that rule shouldn't apply to the coach too.
Should we be allowed to? Because I know once you sign your letter, your commitment letter, you are bound to that school, and the school has to release you. So should we be
Can-
allowed to put that? Should that kid be obligated to stay at that school
Um,
based off the fact that it's a sport, you're committing to the school, but you're going for the coach?
I would still apply the penalty if you want to transfer to the student.
You'd apply the penalty. Nick,
Yeah.
what do you think?
It's a good question. Because I know it used to be what, a year? You guys were saying?
Yeah. It was a year.
As
Now
long
it's
as-
not a
as
year.
long
You
as-
can
Possibly
transfer.
two.
You could just
Possibly
go-
two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying it was like a medical or like a graduate transfer, right? They could just play right away originally.
No. Originally, I believe it was you sat out a year. You needed a medical or NCAA waiver to play right away. I don't think
Right.
a graduate transfer was still allowed to play. I think that was step 2. A graduate transfer could play right away, and then now step 3, the graduate transfer gets the extra
Everyone.
year, as long as your current school doesn't offer that class or that major.
Yeah, I would think it's kind of, again, it's tough. Like, I don't really mind I don't mind them not sitting. Unless they're like within conference. That would be my only thing. Like if an Alabama player is transferring to
Georgia.
Ole Miss,
Which they
maybe
do.
the only thing is if Alabama and Ole Miss end up playing each other the next season, maybe they can't play that game per se.
That's an interesting thought.
But I don't think they should have to sit the whole year. You know, because like think about it. Like if say like in basketball or something, like if you're trading players and then you end up playing that person in the same year, right? Like Luka and AD are going to play each other on April 9th,
Yeah.
like we said. So, but I think in college, like especially college football, you're playing one game a week and then you don't play that team again until next year, potentially. Or you might play them 3 times if you're, playing them in the conference and then the playoff or something. You never know. But yeah, I think the one thing I would say is if you're transferring within conference, you can't play against the team you transferred from.
Let me play devil's advocate
Ooh,
right
I
here.
like that, Nick. I like that.
Let me play devil's advocate. I'm gonna ask you both this question, and I know you'll both know, and I'm curious. Nick Saban left LSU to go to Alabama.
Yep.
His players, we want to play for Nick Saban. We've had him as a coach before. We like it. We're getting better. We're transferring out to Alabama. They left with their coach.
Yep.
Should they have to sit while their coach can coach right away?
I don't think the coach should be allowed to coach either.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. Is that if the players get the penalty and they're following the coach shouldn't coach.
So who's coaching the team?
Let me.
They're gonna have an interim.
Let me correct that statement. If their contract is complete, and then they go to a different school, then they can do whatever right away.
Yeah.
So let's say like the Nick Saban example. If he had 3 years left at LSU, and then just leaves to go to, well, I mean, if he was bought out of his contract, then the contract's complete at that point, per that agreement. But if it's not, say Alabama buys out his LSU contract.
Yes.
At that point, he should not be allowed to coach against LSU the following season. That game. So then it would be whoever's the interim coach or whoever they deem the assistant or the associate head coach for that game.
So are we just punishing the head coach in that and not all the other coaches coming with him?
Well, if those assistant coaches also had contracts that were bought out by the other university, then they would have to sit too.
So who's coaching the team?
It'd have to be an interim because look,
they got to figure that out.
They had to figure it out when Michigan won the national championship 2 years ago. Harbaugh wasn't even there for was he? He wasn't even there until the championship game, if I'm not mistaken.
Got to be like a position coach or something.
Yeah,
but
somebody stepped in.
my point is this. The point I'm making is this. And just on that note, is Harbaugh's assistants coach the game.
Yep.
If we're pulling your whole coaching staff from one school to another, we're punishing everybody because everybody was under contract. So are we hiring a random person to coach one game?
See, I don't agree with Nick about the whole one game thing. Like I do for like the players shouldn't be allowed to play against that team if it got waived by the NCAA or if there is no penalty. If they're playing within conference, they shouldn't be able to play against that team. However, the coaching is a little bit different. I just don't think that they should be. I think there should be a 1-year penalty in all. But I don't know how the coaching situation will work, especially if you have a whole coaching staff. It's a weird scenario that I feel like we're going to be going in circles around because I don't even understand it.
Well, yeah, basically the question was in essence in general, players have to sit out when they transfer a year. When
Yeah.
Coaches can leave whenever they want and they don't have any penalties.
Right. I would say give the coach the penalty. Also,
give a coach a penalty.
Yes.
Okay. Nick, short way. Should we be punishing coaches for leaving schools when they have commitments that sometimes are far longer lasting than some of these players? Like I'll give you an example. We know Cooper Flagg's only going to be in school for 1 year.
Correct.
But we've had John Shire is on a 5-year contract. John Shire leaves after 2 years, which he didn't. But let's say he leaves after 2 years. Should we be punishing him for not finishing his contract, even if he was bought out? He did sign it.
Well, I mean, if he's bought out, he finishes his contract.
Okay, so let's say so fair. Because I guess if he's paying off the rest of it, right?
As long as that's written in the agreement, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, as long as there's no breach for him leaving. Like, if he leaves and he, say he goes to coach, I don't know, Georgia Tech, right? That's an ACC school, right?
Yes.
As long as there's no violation of his current contract with Duke, and he can go to Georgia Tech, say through a buyout or Georgia Tech buys out Duke's contract, as long as that's allowed in his current agreement with Duke, then there should be no penalty. Except for, I mean, I don't think they should really sit, but I mean, if you're going to sit a player, why are we treating a coach differently?
Exactly. I think that was always been my question. I'm glad I finally got to have an avenue to bring that conversation up because I've always wondered why we punish players who are only there for 4 years, but we have coaches who can be there a lot longer.
And I think if you're
let them team hop.
Right. Yeah, and I think if you're that other school, you're aware of that choice.
Absolutely.
You're bringing those guys in because you see how good they are, so going in, okay, I'm not going to have them for this game. I need to plan accordingly. Load management type vibe.
Bring it back full circle. Back on load management.
Exactly.
Okay. Those are good perspectives. I always like having those conversations with people because I am one of those people who look at the transfer portal every summer and see where people are going because I'm curious and I want to know how we look in the fall or what schools will look like in the fall.
Right.
So I'm a transfer portal junkie during the fall. During the summer, I will not lie about that. But those are our big topics that we were going to cover. We're going to move on now to topic number 5, so to speak. This is Nick's rants. Nick, what are we ranting about this week?
Okay, so my rant of the day is going to be, I actually have 2 things. The first thing is Jamal Murray, who lost me my bet today because I picked the Nuggies to pick the Celtics, and I saw Jamal Murray play a half of basketball with one eye closed because he looked like he was taking a nap. He tried to turn it up in the second half, but he was the one player that needed to do anything consistently. And I'm only saying this because I had skin in the game. So Murray cost me, man, but that's all right. It's all good. My other rant of the day is going to be a trade that went down today in the NFL. And I hope I don't steal anyone's thunder, but the 49ers have traded Deebo Samuel to the Commanders for just a fifth-round pick, which, in my opinion, is great for the Commanders, but it's absolutely despicable if you're the 49ers that you only got a fifth-round pick for a guy like Deebo Samuel and his talents. And this just tells me, with him being traded, they are going to give Brock Purdy an extension, and I think that is just a huge mistake. We've talked about this last week. I think he's a decent quarterback, but I don't think he gets them a championship. Not to mention Deebo is their most versatile offensive player. I don't like the fact that they only got a fifth-round pick, and I just think this is all going to self-destruct soon. I see bad things coming to San Francisco. I don't see how this benefits them at all. I don't. So that's my rant of the day, even though it's not really a emotional rant, but this was such a bad trade for the 49ers, in my opinion. But because
Yeah,
it's going to be a harbinger for things to come.
Man, the Deebo trade, man. Like, at minimum, I saw everyone talking about how he would, at minimum, go for a fourth.
Well, they were trying to get Jonathan Allen, the defensive lineman,
Yeah.
was supposed to be part of the trade. Yet somehow the commander said, "Nah, bro, we're keeping him, and you're giving us Deebo for a sandwich." And San Francisco said, "Yeah, I think that's actually better."
Well,
And so they just got rid of him
they
for cookies.
they
I don't.
they think that lightning can
Whatever.
strike twice in the draft when they can pick late and
Well, they took Ricky Pearsall. What did he even do? Like that's they. I'm sorry. I just
that's why it's
where
a
are they
Nick
even
rant.
picking in the draft? Like yeah, now it's turning into a rant for sure. Where are they even picking in the draft? Do we know for
well,
sure?
they're gonna be getting that's the Commander's pick. So that fifth round pick is gonna be late.
Well, who cares about the fifth round pick? Can you name me a fifth round pick from the 49ers in the last 5 years?
Well, we can name you the last pick in the draft for the 49ers.
Yeah, who's going to get paid too much money?
Again, that's the San
Okay,
Francisco 49ers self-destructing more than
yeah. So they pick 11th in this year's draft. So who are we looking at? We're looking at Luther Burden from
Well,
Mizzou.
what are they looking to get? I think that's
would McMillan go that high, or would he go higher?
I think Tet goes before 11. But that's another topic for another day.
Okay.
But I don't like I did not like them drafting Ricky Pearsall where they did. They took him in the first round when he was a third round receiver, in my opinion. And to prove my point, what were his stats? He caught 31 passes for 400 yards. First round pick. You don't take a number 3 receiver in the first round. That's my rant of the day. Dan Fran will self-destruct sooner rather than later. There's my Cam Jam of the week. I stole your thunder, Cam. I'm sorry, but I just had to get off my chest.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I get it. I know we were talking earlier about that trade, and you had some emotion behind it. So I think that's a good rant of the week. I mean, I'm sure you're not the only one who feels that way. I'm sure it's
Great
cloudy.
trade for Washington, but
I
I'm sure
like
it's awful.
I like not only poking the fire, but I like throwing logs in every now and then just to keep it burning real nice.
yeah,
The
now we're
Knicks
all toasty. So thanks.
the Knicks are losing to the Heat entering the fourth quarter by 6 points.
Oh my! Don't even.
What? You know what? Because we're
Don't
recording, I gotta keep
even.
moving on. I will call you about that, Nick, because we will have some fun conversations about that one. But Baywood, I guess you're not placing a bet on the Knicks, but what are your bets of the week? What are we looking at?
All right, so just for entertainment purposes here, I'm gonna clear out the DraftKings account down to 100. And then I'll keep starting next week, I'll keep a tag in the top right that
Yeah.
shows Baywood's bets, and it's gonna be the balance of my DraftKings account as I make these picks.
Oh.
So
Can I copy your picks?
if you want to, I mean, I can add you to
Sweet.
my betting group, and then you could just see I'll start one for us and just name it like Busted Coverage, and then whoever wants to join can join. And then you can follow every pick that I do. It'll notify you.
Oh, that's awesome.
On
Let
DraftKings.
me get my notepad ready.
So tonight it's a rematch between the Lakers and Clippers.
Yes.
The Clippers are favored by 2.5. I did not see who's out. Luka Doncic and LeBron are both a game time decision.
They're
I
both
believe
playing.
Mr. Murray's out.
Yeah, he's been having back issues, and then Austin Reeves is out with he's day to day with the calf. The over line keeps dropping. It started at like 223 or 223.5, and it's down to 220. I'm gonna take the over on it.
Over 220.
Yep. Or lower, whatever. If it's dropped since then, let me open up DraftKings and see. Of course, it disappeared from the NBA. Not even available to bet right now. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if you see it, but yeah, that's my pick
They
of the
heard you
week.
say it.
It's hard to pick basketball games throughout the week because you don't see what the lines are. I'm also eyeing up OKC versus Memphis later in the week, and I'm eyeing the over just because both those teams can score like crazy. And I'm expecting it to hit between 250 and 260. So anything over like 240, I would think is a safe bet for that game. So that would be my second pick. The DraftKings will probably play it at 255 or 256. If it's at that number, I'll take the under. But if it's at 240 or lower, I'm taking the over guaranteed. Those are my two picks.
So right, I just opened my DraftKings up. The over under right now for Lakers Clippers tonight is 222
Okay.
flat.
Okay. I have it. I placed the bet earlier, and I have it at over 220 minus 110.
Over 220.
So
Beautiful.
that's what I took, and then I'm going to be keeping an eye on the OKC Memphis game on Wednesday.
Interesting. Okay.
So both those teams can score like crazy. I mean, the Grizzlies themselves are just all offense. So I like those two picks.
All right. Well, we'll keep our eye out in those games this week. I'm excited. I don't really bet, as we all know this, but I might put some in for Baywood's bets, kind of help him out a little bit, make it sound a little better. So we'll see. We'll see. Anything else, Matt, or just those two things you really have your eye on this week?
For right now, just those two. I typically I try to keep the bets to weekends and Wednesday because Wednesday is the big, when you do your weekly fantasy draft. So I like to eye up those games a lot.
All right.
So
It's good.
just for
Good.
now.
Good.
Yeah.
Good food for thought. We're gonna go to Cam's Jams then. Quick side note before I give the other two jams my 2 cents. Nick, we were at Taproom earlier, and South Carolina and Texas both won, so they had their coin flip to see who would be the top seed in their championship. And
Can I
the
guess?
South Carolina Gamecocks won the coin flip, so they will
So
be
they're
the
one.
top seed in the women's SEC championship. It came down to a coin flip, which is honestly awesome.
Crazy.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
So that to
Crazy.
me is awesome.
Congrats
So
to South Carolina.
the kudos to Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks, even though this is UConn country, I'm a huge fan of hers, so I will give them credit where credit is due.
She also likes the Eagles and Go Birds.
I heard she's a Kenny Pickett fan too, but we'll just throw that out there.
Go Birds.
No, nobody should be a fan of Kenny Pickett. No, I'm kidding. That's just too rude. But
I had to.
ugh.
But
Well,
my jams of
I'll
the
get
week
a
are
rant in
this.
there on that eventually. Well, let's get to the off season in the NFL before I start ranting about him. I'm already still sick to my stomach from the Super Bowl.
So this is going to be a great week. For those of you who don't know, this is basically the last full week of college basketball. March Madness is here. The regular season comes to an end. So actually, there are 3 games that I think everyone should keep their eye on because they are packed with NBA talent. They're highly ranked, and for the last one, has the best player in the country on it. On Wednesday, Alabama versus Florida, number 6 versus number 3, in Tallahassee, I believe. So that'll be a phenomenal game. Anyone who watched Florida play this year came out of nowhere. They have potential to be the 2 seed in the SEC championship. It's going to be a phenomenal game. For some strange reason, Alabama's playing again on Saturday, but they're playing number 1 Auburn. And I believe that'll be Auburn's senior day. So you can see the best team in the country as of right now take on the team that I think most people picked to win the SEC. Not only SEC, but a national title in Alabama. Just great to watch. And then close it out, college basketball's biggest rivalry, Duke, Carolina, 6:30 Saturday night. Grab the popcorn. Cooper Flag will be on TV in a college regular game for the final time.
We might have to watch that on Mohegan.
I know. He will not be any more regular season games. After that, it's one and done for him. Losing the ACC, he's out. Then the tournament, he's out. So,
Yep.
Possibly only 3 more games of Cooper Flag at the least. So make sure everybody watches so you can see him, because after that, you're going to be paying a lot more to see him in person in Brooklyn, if we're lucky.
Spoiler, it will be more than 3 games, but
look, I picked him to win the national title. It's definitely more than 3,
yeah,
but at a
definitely.
minimum, 3 Saturday, ACC tournament, then NCAA tournament. Find at least 3, but there will be more. So those are my jams of the week. Before we wrap up, anything else in anybody's minds? Any news they want to put out?
Yes, I want to jump on this because Nick had me looking forward to this, and then they restructured Matt Stafford's deal like 2 days after he got me hyped that he was going to the Steelers. And now I got to deal with the whole Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Kenny Pickett bullshit all over again. Oh.
Well,
or are we
the
picking one of the
young.
Yeah. But I was so hyped. I'm like, ooh, if we get Matt Stafford, we might actually get a receiver with him. No, they restructure his deal. They're like, we're going to put this whole kibosh to bed now. I'm like, Nick, oh. It's like he jinxed it.
Well, I really thought it was a good one, but the Rams thought differently, obviously. I don't know.
Well, it's always hard to get a kid to leave California for Pennsylvania. So, in restructuring that deal, I'm quite sure that might have played some of the role in it.
Well,
but
tell that to Palomalu. He left what was it, USC for Pennsylvania. Obviously he got drafted, but he never left. Yeah, but he never left. He re-signed multiple contracts.
Well, he got drafted there, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so he had no choice. You don't have a choice where you're drafted. Well, unless you're
Eli Manning. I was just gonna bring that up.
Unless you're Eli
Baywood,
Manning.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to get you hyped up.
No, don't apologize to him. We'll wait. We want this to simmer. We want the fans to
Baywood,
simmer.
I'm not sorry.
There you go.
You're going to keep Russ, and you guys aren't going to make the playoffs next year.
Well,
okay. I mean, I wasn't saying that, but I think that that'll be a good topic for next week. We should look at the combine, see when some of these pro days are going to be, and then maybe look at some of the trades that did and didn't happen. I mean, also you had potential Aaron Rodgers going to the Giants.
Yeah, we're gonna have free agency opening up. We're gonna have the draft coming up, so we definitely have a lot to talk about.
And not wait.
And not to mention, MLB, Major League Baseball is getting ready. It's spring league right now, so we'll be diving into a little bit of that as we go forward. We have March Madness is here, men's and women's. Hockey's in full
season.
What?
Bracketology.
I know. We will do a bracketology show.
Yes.
That I think is in Selection Sunday. I think is 3 weeks from now. So
probably less than that, I would think, right?
That'll be, you know what? That might be a late night show though, because bracketology won't end until the West Coast games are done or start. So we might have to do a late night one on that.
Or we could like update it as they're making the choices.
That is true. We could do that one.
Food for thought.
Yeah, food for thought. We'll worry about that in a few weeks when it happens. But no, I think this was a good conversation, and we'll be back same time next week. This has been our Busted Coverage podcast with Matthew Baywood, Nicholas Basampieri, and Cam Griffin. Good night, folks.